Hey guys, it's Hot Take Jake. I'm doing my punishment for AEW All Out. Today I'm going to read you guys a story. This story is called Coffee House Proposal. I'm going to read the first chapter of it. This whole first chapter. If Pat remembers, he'll put the link in the description so you can read along. So let's get going. Chapter 1. It's been almost 2 years since he and Big Cass had been more than just barista / customer. And it's been amazing. Every day is a new adventure with Cass. From his crazy stories at the coffee shop to the charity drives Enzo along to. Events to just Cass being his boisterous self. I'm reading this word for word.
I didn't proofread.
Enzo watches as Cass expertly pulls espresso, makes latte art, and rings up customers. His smile is bright and friendly, and never fails to make Enzo's heart feel so damn full, and sappy for that matter. Cass is definitely a sight to behold. Long, capable fingers, long hair pulled back, dimples deep and vivid with sparkling eyes to top it all off. He towers over most, and he should look intimidating, but instead the epitome of welcome. So no wonder his store is just the busiest one in town. A Starbucks down the street, notwithstanding. Cass happens to look up right at the moment, and his grin, if possible, gets even wider. Those adorable white teeth biting his bottom lip. "Be right there," he mouths, and Enzo nods before looking around, trying to find a seat. His usual spot is surprisingly open, but Enzo figures it's just a perk of being the owner's boyfriend. Taking his laptop out of his bag and adjusting his things, Enzo settles in to try and attempt to get some work done. Cass comes by, right as if summoned by magic. Enzo guesses work will have to wait. Cass accounting. That's simple math anyway. "Hey babe," Enzo greets, pulling on Cass's apron so he can kiss his boyfriend. Cass tenses a little bit, but melts into the kiss, always opening so pettily for Enzo. "Hey stud muffin," Cass replies. Once they pull away, Enzo wrinkles his nose and smiles a little bit at the endearment. Cass always manages to relate it to food and make it the cheesiest names ever. This is so much better if you're actually imagining Enzo and Cass doing it. It's so fucking cute. "How's your day been?" Enzo asks, crinkling his brow. Cass remains standing with a mug in his hand rather than sitting in front of Enzo and enabling the terrible coffee addiction Enzo has. It got worse since he started coming to the bean. "Cass, everything okay?" Enzo asks. When Cass doesn't say anything, Cass nods and places the coffee in front of Enzo, uncharacteristically quieter. It's weirding Enzo out, to be honest, and he has no idea what's going on. He can't take his eyes off Cass's oddly still form, not even paying attention to the mug of his life elixir in front of him. Clearly Cass coffee too. It says, the sentence is, "Clearly Cass coffee too." "Your coffee, Enzo," Cass says, well, whispering really. Enzo is more worried about Cass, but Cass is gesturing to the cup like it's very important, so Enzo looks down and then feels his breath catch. He remembers telling Cass how much he loved coffee art, and Cass definitely went above and beyond his latest creation. It said, "Will you marry me?" The words take a minute to sink in, and by the time Enzo looks up, he sees Cass on his knee by the table, a ring box open, in those awesome hands. Strands of his hair, that came out are falling into his eyes, shielding them a little from view, but Enzo can see vulnerability in them. Cass meets his gaze. When he sees that Enzo has stopped gaping at the mug, "Enzo, I know that there are a million words to use and a million ways to propose. I choose to do it the best way I know how. I love you. Will you marry me?" Cass asks. Sure enough, though, Enzo can see the way his body language is screaming with nerves. Enzo laughs before responding, "I love you too. Hell yes, I'll marry you." He pretty much launches himself at Cass, who catches him like Enzo knew he would, and they kiss. Enzo's hands tangling in Cass's long hair, and Cass's arms close snugly around him. Enzo can hear echoes of claps cheers from the people in the coffee shop, but he was too caught up in his fiance's kiss to care about anything else. 8 months later, Enzo and Cass took each other's hands and nodded in unison. "We do." Vince surveyed the room, and I have to ask this, even though I know the answer. Do any here object to this union? Cass swore he heard actual crickets chirping in the building. With that, silence as loud as it was. "And let's begin. I think you both prepared your own vows?" Vince asked. "Oh, there's still more." Cass nodded. He knew that most of the time people read their vows from a sheet of paper, but the words he had to say were too big to write down and recite. Taking strength from Enzo's hands in his, he began to speak. I'm starting to cry a little bit here.
Oh, you're not even to the best part.
"Enzo, I met you when you first walked into my coffee shop 2 years ago. And when you asked me to be your date to a banquet, I couldn't imagine you would come this far. I mean, now that they are each other's date to our wedding. When we first started dating, you've done some weird things and some stupid things I didn't always agree with or like. Things I almost broke up with you for. I almost broke up with you for sometimes. But now I'm glad that I didn't. I promise that I will stay with you. We've been together through thick and thin, and I can't imagine my life without you in it." Cass took a shaky breath and focused on Enzo's big blue eyes. The other man was near tears. With moisture swimming in his eyes, Cass continued. "When you got fired from that restaurant, I was proud of you. I don't think I've ever said that, but it's true. You protected that girl from that guy trying to rob it. Oh. And I was so proud, even though it cost you your job, I still am. I always will be proud of you. I love you." Cass choked up those words, or choked on those words, and blinked back tears. Enzo had allowed some tears to fall, but when Vince said, "And what do you have to say to that, Enzo?" he smiled wider than Cass had ever seen him smile. "This is our day, Cass. Our siblings have gotten married to special people, and now it's our turn. I'll admit, I'm the first to talk about your height all the time, but your stature can't contain your heart. It shines out all around you, and it is breathtaking, and I promise I'll always be able to see it." Cass had never seen Enzo this serious before. "I love you, Cass, and I love the fact that soon I will be your husband and life partner. Since you sold your shop a few months ago because you wanted to do something else, I supported you on that. And I know you'll do something great. I'll always have faith in you, even when I can't have faith in myself." Enzo was crying. Cass was near tears himself. It was the final thing Enzo said that quenched it. And Cass felt his tears slipping down his face as he reached out to pull Enzo into his arms. I was never more shocked than when you got down on one knee in the coffee shop. I didn't think I deserved that love. I mean, there we both were working, and near our 2-year anniversary. I thought you were kidding, and now we're here. I promise I would never doubt you again. Cass wrapped his arms around Enzo. He cried into his shoulder and said, "Do you, Colin Cassidy, take Enzo to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Of course, Cass said, "I do." But when the same question was proposed to Enzo, it took him a moment to compose himself and say, "You don't even need to ask that. Of course I do." Vince nodded. I actually did have to, but as we all knew was going to happen, by the authority vested in me by the state of Florida, I pronounce you husband and husband. Now then, we all know you've been holding off this. Just kiss each other already. Cass pulled Enzo so hard to himself that their kiss was borderline painful. He was vaguely aware of the cheers and hooting coming from all around them. He broke their kiss after he wasn't sure how long and took a breath. Then chaos erupted. People surged up to him and congratulated them in a whirlwind. Cass would remember forever. Through it all, Enzo clung to his hand like a lifeline, and Cass knew he was squeezing back just as hard. Enzo and Cass entered the hotel room that they were staying at for the honeymoon by the resort. "Did you have them set things up?" Enzo asked. Looking around at the hotel suite, he shrugs out of his jacket. "There has to be a dozen candles scattered around the room, the light casting flickering shadows all around." He grins. "What, no rose petals?" On the bed, Cass comes up behind him and wraps his arms around Enzo's waist. "Sorry," he murmured into Enzo's hair, and Enzo can feel him smiling up against it. "I think I know how I can make it up to you." Cass's hands start to unbutton Enzo's white shirt. Heat flares low in Enzo's belly when Cass's fingertips brush over his collarbone. They've been waiting all day for this. Shared looks all night at Enzo wanting to drag Cass off to the coat room or any other secluded area that they could find in the reception hall. Enzo's lips are soft against his neck. They part and his tongue swipes out, hot and wet against Enzo's skin. Raising a shiver in his body, Enzo turns in Cass's arms and pulls him down for a kiss. He brushes his tongue over Cass's lower lip and slips it inside when Cass opens up for him. One of his hands curls in Cass's hair, and he feels Cass's hand settle at his waist. They move to the bed and wind up with Enzo sitting at the end of it and Cass on his knees between Enzo's legs. He pushes up the hem on Enzo's white undershirt and presses a kiss just above the navel while his hands stroke over the thin material Enzo's black dress pants, making his cock achingly hard. Enzo is sure that he'll never get over how much he loves the feel of Cass's hands on him and bites down on his bottom lip, stifling a groan that rumbled out. Leaning back on his arm, Enzo watches Cass with half-lidded eyes and undoes the zipper. Cass's glittering blue eyes flicker up Enzo's face, and he hooks his fingers into the hem of Enzo's pants and the boxers and tugs them down to his ankles. The air is cool against Enzo's cock, and he shivers again so slightly. Cass strokes along the length of his sensitive, heated flesh, circling at the base loosely. His other hand comes against Enzo's thigh, the material of his ring feeling cool against his skin. He sucks in a breath when Cass's mouth covers the head of his cock. His soft, pink tongue swipes over it and laps up a dribble of pre-cum. Enzo's head returns to Cass's hair, stroking the soft strands. Another groan escapes him. Cass's tongue slides down over the vein on the underside of the shaft and all the way back up before sucking down. The hand that's in Cass's hair tightens in response. He can feel Cass swallowing around him and has to force himself not to come right in that instant. Slowly, Cass pulls back, tongue dragging along the length until just the tip is in his mouth, and swirls his tongue around it. He swallows Enzo all the way down and forces another wordless cry from him. Cass moves, fucking his mouth and Enzo's cock, and working the base of it with his fist. Enzo rolls his hip in time with Cass's movement. There's still more. Oh fuck, Cass. He pants, arms too tired to support him any longer. Enzo lays on his back and lets his hand slip free of Cass's hair. Liquid heat rushes through his veins, making every nerve spark and set his pulsing racing? This is not great writing. The shock of cool air and loss of Cass's mouth around his dick drag a painful noise from his mouth. Enzo sits up a little bit to see what Cass is doing. Cass wraps his other hand around Enzo's cock, stroking absently as he reaches behind him for his bag. Cass, come on, Enzo pleases, unsatisfied with the lack of Cass's slick, warm mouth on him. He settles back against the bed. Just hold on, Cass replies, and continues his search through his bag with one hand. A moment later, Cass returns, and Enzo hears the sound of a cap being opened. Cass takes his mouth against with perfect suction as before and rubs two cool, slick fingers over Enzo's hole. Enzo tries to push up against Cass's mouth and back against his fingers at the same time with a groan. His body offers little resistance to Cass's fingers. They easily find his prostate, brushing past with each stroke and causing his cock to throb. One hand grips at the sheets while the other comes to a rest on the back of Cass's head. The delicious wet sound of Cass's mouth makes only adds to the feeling of being completely engulfed by Cass. The feel of his mouth and fingers as they work the moist, sensitive part of his body, and the taste of him still lingering on Enzo's tongue, and the faint smell of his cologne hanging in the air. Again, Cass swallows around Enzo's cock, his finger pressing against the spot, and Enzo comes with a strangled cry, pouring down Cass's throat, and the sound devolves into long, drawn-out noises as he feels his whole body pulsing, slowly turn to mush. His hips give a few more swallow thrusts before stilling. Cass allows Enzo's softening cock to slip free of his mouth and presses a kiss to the left knee before disentangling himself. The mattress shifts and Enzo manages to get his eyes open. For his effort, he's rewarded with the sight of Cass stripping out of his clothes till the only thing covering his skin is soft golden candlelight. He smiles languidly as he takes him all in, and Cass looks up, catching the gaze and grin back at him. Cass comes back to bed, covering Enzo's body with his own, and absolutely nothing between them. Enzo reaches up to run his fingers through Cass's hair and pulls him into a lazy, messy kiss until they have to pull away for air. still love tasting. He still loves tasting himself on Cass's tongue and sucks and licks until it's gone. Even then, Cass can't keep his mouth off Enzo and kisses along his jaw until he reaches his ear. Love you, Cass purrs into it, and Enzo feels him smile when he returns the sentiment. Still more to go.
You get not bothered?
Yeah. Oh, I have to jerk off after this.
Oh shit.
Cass takes hold of Enzo's hands, fingers entwined, and slides them up between the pillows, grinning down at him and keeping just out of reach Enzo's mouth. No matter how hard Enzo tries to regain control, Cass is just that much stronger and keeps him pressed against the mattress. All that wriggling around Enzo does ends up paying off for him. When Cass's concentration breaks, he's incredibly hard, and Enzo moving against him seems to make him that much harder. Enzo notices and does it again, more purposefully this time, and Cass growls. Tilting his head, Cass closes his teeth around the skin and pulse spot Enzo's neck. Enzo grasps it in surprise. Knew they'd get you to stop, Cass says smugly and kisses him. God, thought about that all day. Couldn't wait to be alone with you. He pauses to capture Enzo's mouth, tongue sweeping inside. His voice is breathing and desperate as he rocks his hips against Enzo's. Wanted to get you like this so fucking bad. Enzo whispers when the tip of Cass's cock brushes up against his hole. He'd been lying to himself if he hadn't been thinking about this all day as well. They decided to do something new for the first night as a married couple. Nothing kinky or anything, but something that would show their commitment to each other in a different way. A pleasant twinge of anticipation rises in Enzo's stomach at the thought, Cass lets go. Cass lets go of Enzo's hand as they snake up Cass's back, following the long column of his spine all the way to his broad shoulders. It's a path that Enzo knows well. After 2 years, all kinds of touching, he's familiar with the feel of Cass's back when he's calm and relaxing on the couch, as well as how those same muscles feel all tensed up as Cass fucks into him. Want you, he says, voice rough and just as desperate sounding as Cass's voice. Without another word, Cass sits up and finds the bottle of lube that had rolled away from them on the bed. Enzo watches with interest as Cass slicks the liquid over his cock and feels his own twitch in response. He also pulls Cass back down and kisses him deeply. One hand fisted in Cass's hair and wraps his leg around Cass's narrow hips. Cass pulls away, their foreheads still touching, and reaches down between their bodies to grab his dick to guide himself into Enzo. It's slick enough that there isn't much resistance, but the friction is so much more different and so much better than without the latex between them. Does this mean
There's no condom.
they've been using condoms this whole time?
Yes, they're safe.
Oh, so Enzo couldn't get pregnant, obviously. Enzo watches Cass's eyes widen at the sensation. Jesus, he rasps out. Once he's completely inside, he's shaken ever so slightly, and Enzo reaches up to run his hand soothingly over Cass's arm, and not another word is spoken between them. once they get a rhythm going. The only sound that can be heard are their shared harsh breathing, the wet slapping of skin on skin. For Enzo, his pulse thrumming loudly in his ear, hitting his ear, the glide of Cass's cock inside of him, stretching him out, and hitting that spot over and over draws out a loud groan, incoherent sounds from Enzo's mouth. For a moment, Enzo takes in the sight above him, Cass's face hard with effort and concentration. A sheen of sweat covers his body, accenting every inch of muscle on his arm and chest. Enzo moves his head up and licks his tongue. It licks the long line of Cass's throat, tasting salt on his skin, before pulling Cass in for another long, messy kiss. Cass reaches between them, fitting a hand around Enzo's now achingly hard cock, and strokes in firmly, setting movements that have Enzo panting and getting closer to the edge. He murmurs something in Enzo's ear, but Enzo can only understand, feels amazing, oh fuck, so close. Enzo's breathing hitches, and there is just enough time for him to hook his arm around Cass's back and grab onto his shoulder as he arches his back and comes. There, nothing but white noise in his brain for a few long moments, and then he registers Enzo's heavy breathing, shifting weight on top of him. He labors his labored breathing and incomprehensible noises. Turning his head until his lips find Cass's ear, Enzo breathes a series of rumbling encouragements, even in the state knowing just how his voice affects Cass. Wordless cry rippling in his mouth. With the one final thrust, Cass collapses on top of Enzo in a boneless, sweaty, panting heap of limbs. It gets uncomfortable and Cass pulls out, rolling onto his back as he brushes his damp hair out of his eyes as he looks at Enzo, a brilliant, wide, contented smile spread across his face. Cass looks at him, his own smile huge despite how completely exhausted he is. Even the idea of getting up to get a wash right, to clean up with seems like too much effort. He goes easily when Cass wraps an arm around him to pull him closer and kiss him. Without a word, Cass gets up and retrieves a warm, damp cloth from the bathroom and proceeds to clean them up. He tosses it in the general direction of the bathroom door before blowing out the candles in the room, curling back up with Enzo beneath the comforter. Cass nuzzled the crook of Enzo's neck, pressed a kiss there, and tells Enzo that he loves him, giving the hand Cass has on Enzo's hairy stomach a squeeze. He tells Cass that he loves him just as much. And then just a side note at the end where the author adds, no clue where this idea came from. So that was a beautiful story of love. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and check back for the rest of our videos. I'm gonna go jerk off now. See you guys next time.